Dave B Racing from South Africa is second. Wyermu in Kemmel Straight is P3. Dave B Racing is P2 driving a Toyota. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand in Lacombe is P1. Best lap is a 2:33.446. Dave B Racing is third. The race dictator from New Zealand in Kemmel Straight is P3. Toddy Mustang is second. Wyermu is third. Best lap is a 3:46.234. Dave B Racing is P1. Best lap is a 2:33.145. Wyermu in Kemmel Straight is third. Dave B Racing in Corby Paul Frere is P2. Wyermu in Puhan is P3. The race dictator in Radion is P4. Best lap is a 7:50.729. Toddy Mustang in Fanya is P1 driving a McLaren. Best lap is a 2:32.062. The race dictator in Brussels is fourth. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand is first. Wiremu in Radion is third. Best lap is a 2:35.332. The race dictator in Blanchimont is P4. Wiremu in Brussels is third. Dave B Racing in Bus Stop Chicane is third. Jason Short from New Zealand in Radion is P5. Wiremu in Blanchimont is P4. Jason Short in Ribach is fifth, driving a Toyota. Dave B Racing is third. The race dictator in Kemmel Straight is P2. Best lap is a 2:31.977. Wiremu in Malmedy is fourth. Best lap is a 2:35.166. The race dictator in Brussels is second. Jason Short in Bus Stop Chicane is fifth. The race dictator in Campus is second. Dave B Racing in Kemmel Straight is third. Best lap is a 2:33.044. The race dictator in Bus Stop Chicane is P2. Wiremu in Lacombe is P4. Jason Short in Fanya is 5th. Best lap is a 4:04.184. The race dictator in Malmedy is P2. Toddy Mustang in La Source is P1. Best lap is a 2:31.350. Dave B Racing is 3rd. The race dictator in Stabilo is P2. Dave B Racing in Radion is 3rd. The qualification session is at Spa-Francorchamps in Francorchamps, Belgium. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand in La Source is P1. Dave B Racing from South Africa is 5th. Toddy Mustang in Lacombe is P1. Dave B Racing in Rivage is P5. The race dictator from New Zealand in Pohan is 4th. Dave B Racing in Fanya is 5th. 10 minutes remaining in the session. The race dictator is P4. Wiremu is 2nd. Toddy Mustang in La Source is 1st. Toddy Mustang is up 0.87 in Kemmel Straight. Toddy Mustang is up 0.91 in Malmedy. Toddy Mustang is up 0.89 in Puhan. Toddy Mustang is up 1.26 in Stabilo. Toddy Mustang improved his first with a 231.606. The race dictator is P3 driving a McLaren. The race dictator improved his P2 with a 232.127. 0.521 off pole. Dave B Racing in Lost Sources P4. Jason Short from New Zealand in Radion is P3 up 0.10. Best lap is a 233.037. 1.431 off pole. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand in Malmedy is first up 0.17. Toddy Mustang is up 0.55 in Puhan. Toddy Mustang is up 0.67 in Stabilo. 5 minutes remaining in the session. Toddy Mustang is provisional pole with a 230.594. The race dictator is second. The race dictator improved his P2 with a 231.978. 1.384 off pole. Wiremu in Lost Sources fifth driving a McLaren. Jason Short is P4. race dictator in Kemmel Straight is P2 up 0.22. The race dictator is up 0.40 in rivage. The race dictator is up 0.49 in Puhan. The race dictator is up 0.60 in Stabilo. The race dictator improved his second with a 2:30.854. 0.260 off pole. The race dictator is up 0.21 in Eau Rouge. The race dictator is up 0.26 in Lacombe. Jason Short in Brussels is fourth up 0.89. Jason Short is up 1.05 in Fanya. The qualifying session is now in overtime. Jason Short is up 1.16 in Corby Paul Frere. Wiremu in Malmedy is fifth. Best lap is a 2:34.063. 3.469 off pole. broadcast bot is P20. The race session is at Spa-Francorchamps in Francorchamps, Belgium. Toddy Mustang is P1. The race dictator entering the pits is 17th. Toddy Mustang entering the pits is P15. 20 minutes remaining in the session. Race start. Dave B Racing from South Africa is third. Jason Short from New Zealand is P2. Jason Short passed Wiremu for P1. Wiremu in Kemmel Straight is second. Toddy Mustang exiting pits. Dave B Racing in Kemmel Straight is third. Jason Short is first. Wiremu in Brussels is P3. Dave B Racing in Pohon is P2. Wiremu in Pohon on lap 1 is third. Wiremu is now P2. Jason Short is first. The race session is at Spa-Francorchamps in Francorchamps, Belgium. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand is P1. The race dictator from New Zealand is second. 20 minutes remaining in the session. Race start. The race dictator lost second to Jason Short. Jason Short from New Zealand is second. Dave B Racing from South Africa is third. Dave B Racing is now P4. Jason Short in Lacombe is third. Jason Short passed Wiremew for P2. Wiremew in Brussels is third. Dave B Racing is fourth. Wiremew in Fanya is third. Dave B Racing is P4. Wiremew in Corby Paul Frere is P3, 0.4 ahead of Dave B Racing. Dave B Racing is fourth. Wiremew is P4 driving a McLaren, 0.1 behind Dave B Racing. Wiremew passed Dave B Racing for third. Dave B Racing is P4, 0.1 behind Wiremew. Wiremew in Kemmel Straight is third, 0.2 ahead of Dave B Racing. Dave B Racing in Lacombe is fourth driving a Toyota, 0.3 behind Wiremew. Wiremew in Brussels on lap 2 is P3, 0.3 ahead of Dave B Racing. Dave B Racing is fourth, 0.6 behind Wiremew. Wiremew in Fanya is third driving a McLaren, 0.8 ahead of Dave B Racing. Dave B Racing is P4, 0.9 behind Wiremew. Wiremew in Blanchimont is third, 0.6 ahead of Dave B Racing. 15 minutes remaining in the session. Dave B Racing in Bus Stop Chicane is P4, 0.8 behind Wiremew. Wiremew on lap 3 is third, 1.3 ahead of Dave B Racing. Wiremew was 1.2 faster last lap. Dave B Racing in Kemmel Straight is fourth, 1.2 behind Wiremew. Wiremu in Malmedy is P3, 1.2 behind Jason Short. Dave B Racing is 4th, 1.5 behind Wiremu. Wiremu in Puhan is 3rd, 0.8 behind Jason Short. Dave B Racing is 4th, 2.6 behind Wiremu. Wiremu on lap 3 is P3, 0.5 behind Jason Short. Dave B Racing in bus stop chicane is 4th, 2.8 behind Wiremu. Wiremu in La Source on lap 4 is 3rd, 0.5 behind Jason Short. Jason Short is 3rd, 0.1 behind Wiremu. Dave B Racing in Kemmel Straight is P4, 3.2 behind Jason Short. Jason Short in Malmedy is 3rd, 0.2 behind Wiremu. Wiremu was 0.7 faster last lap. Jason Short passed Wiremu for 2nd. Wiremu is P3, 0.3 behind Jason Short. Dave B Racing is 4th, 3.7 behind Wiremu. Wiremu was 1.6 faster last lap. Wiremu is P3, 0.9 behind Jason Short. Dave B Racing is 4th, 4.2 behind Wiremu. 10 minutes remaining in the session. Wiremu in bus stop chicane is P3 driving a McLaren, 0.7 behind Jason Short. Dave B Racing in La Source is 4th, 3.2 behind Wiremu. Wiremu was 1.4 faster last lap. Greg Hurst entering the pits is 6th. Wiremu is 3rd, 1.1 behind Jason Short. Jason Short was 0.6 faster last lap. Dave B Racing in Lacombe is P4 driving a Toyota, 4.3 behind Wiremu. Wiremu is third, 1.0 behind Jason Short. Wiremu passed Jason Short for second. The Race Dictator is fifth, 1.0 behind Jason Short. Dave B Racing in Fanya is P3, 2.5 behind Wiremu. Wiremu is P2, 0.3 behind Toddy Mustang. Toddy Mustang was 1.7 faster last lap. Greg Hurst exiting pits. Dave B Racing in Corby Paul Frere is P3 driving a Toyota, 0.1 behind Wiremu. Wiremu in Blanchimont is P3, 0.5 behind Dave B Racing. Wiremu lost fourth to the Race Dictator. Dave B Racing in Bus Stop Chicane is P2, 0.2 behind Toddy Mustang. Toddy Mustang was 3.2 faster last lap. Jason Short in La Source is P3. Best lap is a 2:33.078. 1.109 off the fastest lap. Dave B Racing in Radion is P2, 0.2 ahead of Jason Short. Jason Short in Kemmel Straight is third driving a Toyota, 0.1 behind Dave B Racing. The Race Dictator in Malmedy is fourth. Best lap is a 2:32.085. 0.116 off the fastest lap. Jason Short in Brussels is P3 driving a Toyota, 0.3 behind Dave B Racing. Dave B Racing in Pulhan is second, 0.2 ahead of Jason Short. Dave B Racing was 5.7 faster last lap. Dave B Racing lost P2 to Jason Short. Jason Short in Fanya on lap 6 is P2, 0.4 ahead of Dave B Racing. 5 minutes remaining in the session. Dave B Racing in Stabilo is third, 0.3 ahead of the Race Dictator. Jason Short in Blanchimont is P2, 0.9 behind Toddy Mustang. The Race Dictator in Bus Stop Chicane is fourth, 1.0 behind Dave B Racing. Jason Short in La Source is second, 1.0 behind Toddy Mustang. race dictator is P4. Jason Short in Kemmel Straight is P2, 1.0 behind Toddy Mustang. The race dictator in Malmedy is P4, 0.2 behind Dave B Racing. The race dictator passed Dave B Racing for P3. Dave B Racing in Brussels is P4. Best lap is a 2:34.485. 2.516 off the fastest lap. Wiremu in Puhan is P5, 0.3 behind Dave B Racing. Dave B Racing was 0.7 faster last lap. Dave B Racing from South Africa in Campus is 4th, 0.2 ahead of Wiremu. Wiremu in Corby Paul Frere is P5 driving a McLaren, 0.2 behind Dave B Racing. Dave B Racing in Blanchimont is P4, 0.3 ahead of Wiremu. Dave B Racing was 0.7 faster last lap. Wiremu in Bus Stop Chicane is 5th, 0.7 behind Dave B Racing. Dave B Racing in La Source is 5th driving a Toyota, 0.6 behind Wiremu. Jason Short in Kemmel Straight is 2nd driving a Toyota, 1.9 behind Toddy Mustang. Dave B Racing on lap 8 is P5, 0.9 behind Wiremu. Wiremu in Brussels is P4, 1.1 ahead of Dave B Racing. Dave B Racing in Puhan is P5, 1.3 behind Wiremu. Jason Short is 2nd. Best lap is a 2:32.046. 0.608 off the fastest lap. Dave B Racing in Corby Paul Frere is 5th, 0.4 behind Wiremu. Wiremu was 2.5 faster last lap. The leader has just finished the race. Toddy Mustang finished P1. Jason Short finished P2. The race dictator finished P3. Bartholomew finished P4. Dave B. Racing finished 5th. Greg Hurst finished P6. Broadcast bot is P7. The race session is at Spa-Francorchamps in Francorchamps, Belgium. Greg Hurst is P1. 20 minutes remaining in the session. Race start. Greg Hurst is now first. The race dictator from New Zealand in La Source is P2. The race dictator lost P2 to Dave B. Racing. Dave B. Racing from South Africa in Radion is second. The race dictator in Kemmel Strait is P3. Dave B. Racing in Rivage is P2. Dave B. Racing lost P2 to the race dictator. The race dictator is second. Dave B. Racing in Puhan is P3. The race dictator in Campus is second. Dave B. Racing in Corby Paul Frere on lap 1 is P3, 0.2 behind the race dictator. The race dictator in Blanchimont on lap 1 is second, 0.3 ahead of Dave B. Racing. Jason Short from New Zealand in Bus Stop Chicane is P4, 0.3 behind the race dictator. The race dictator in La Source is fourth driving a McLaren, 0.1 ahead of Toddy Mustang. The Race Dictator lost P4 to Toddy Mustang. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand in Eau Rouge on lap 2 is P4, 0.2 ahead of the Race Dictator. The Race Dictator in Kemmel Straight is P5 battling Toddy Mustang. The Race Dictator passed Toddy Mustang for P4. Dave B Racing in Malmedy is second. Best lap is a 2:37.348. 1.260 off the fastest lap. The Race Dictator in Brussels is P4. Best lap is a 2:38.349. 2.261 off the fastest lap. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand in Puhan is 5th, 0.7 behind the Race Dictator. The Race Dictator in Fania is 4th, 0.4 behind Jason Short. Toddy Mustang in Stavolo is 5th, 0.6 behind the Race Dictator. Jason Short in Blanchimont is 4th, 0.1 behind the Race Dictator. "15 minutes remaining in the session. Toddy Mustang in Bus Stop Chicane is P5, 0.3 behind Jason Short. Jason Short is 4th, 0.2 behind the Race Dictator. Toddy Mustang is P5, 0.5 behind Jason Short. The Race Dictator in Kemmel Straight is 4th, 0.1 behind Jason Short. Toddy Mustang in Lake Home is P5, 0.3 behind the Race Dictator. The Race Dictator in Brussels is P4, 0.4 ahead of Toddy Mustang. Toddy Mustang is 5th, 0.3 behind the Race Dictator. The Race Dictator is 4th, 0.2 behind Jason Short. Toddy Mustang is P5, 0.2 behind the Race Dictator. The Race Dictator was 0.7 faster last lap. The Race Dictator in Corby Paul Frere is P4, 0.2 ahead of Toddy Mustang. Toddy Mustang is 5th, 0.3 behind the Race Dictator. race dictator is fourth driving a McLaren, 0.5 ahead of Toddy Mustang. Toddy Mustang on lap 4 is fifth, 0.7 behind the race dictator. The race dictator in Kemmel Straight on lap 4 is fourth, 0.9 behind Jason Short. Toddy Mustang in Lacombe on lap 4 is P5, 0.8 behind the race dictator. The race dictator in Brussels is fourth, 0.7 behind Jason Short. Jason Short was 1.2 faster last lap. Toddy Mustang is fifth, 0.7 behind the race dictator. Jason Short in Fania is third, 0.8 behind Dave B Racing. Toddy Mustang is fifth, 0.6 behind the race dictator. Jason Short in Blanchimont is third, 0.6 behind Dave B Racing. 10 minutes remaining in the session. Toddy Mustang in Bus Stop Chicane is fifth driving a McLaren, 0.8 behind the race dictator. Toddy Mustang was 0.6 faster last lap. Jason Short is P3. Best lap is a 2:31.631. 0.020 off the fastest lap. Toddy Mustang is P5, 0.8 behind the race dictator. Jason Short in Kemmel Straight is P3, 0.2 behind Dave B Racing. Jason Short passed Dave B Racing for second. The race dictator in Lacombe is fourth, 0.5 ahead of Toddy Mustang. The race dictator is now P3. Toddy Mustang in Brussels is fourth, 0.4 behind the race dictator. Dave B Racing in Pulhan is fifth, 1.4 behind Toddy Mustang. Toddy Mustang in Campus is P4, 0.4 behind the race dictator. The race dictator in Corby Paul Frere is third. Best lap is a 2:31.826. 0.215 off the fastest lap. Toddy Mustang on lap 5 is P4, 0.3 behind the race dictator. Dave B Racing is 5th, 2.0 behind Toddy Mustang. Toddy Mustang is P4, 0.7 behind the Race Dictator. The Race Dictator in Kemmel Straight is P3, 0.5 ahead of Toddy Mustang. Toddy Mustang in Malmedy on lap 6 is P4, 0.5 behind the Race Dictator. Toddy Mustang passed the Race Dictator for P3. The Race Dictator in Brussels is 4th, 0.3 behind Toddy Mustang. Toddy Mustang in Puhan is 3rd, 2.4 behind Jason Short. Greg Hurst in Brussels is 6th. Jason Short is P2, 0.5 behind Wiremew. 5 minutes remaining in the session. The Race Dictator in Stabilo is 4th, 0.9 behind Toddy Mustang. The Race Dictator is now 4th. Jason Short in Corby Palfrere is 3rd, 0.5 behind Wiremew. Toddy Mustang in Blanchimont is 4th, 0.4 ahead of the Race Dictator. Jason Short is P3. Wiremew is P2, 0.3 behind Greg Hurst. Wiremew is now 1st. Jason Short is 2nd driving a Toyota, 0.3 ahead of Toddy Mustang. Toddy Mustang in Radayan is P3, 0.3 behind Jason Short. Jason Short is 2nd. Toddy Mustang in Rivage is 3rd, 0.5 ahead of the Race Dictator. Jason Short is P2, 0.6 behind Wiremew. Toddy Mustang in Puhan is fourth, battling the race dictator. Toddy Mustang was 1.0 faster last lap. Jason Short in Campus is second, driving a Toyota, 0.3 behind Wiremute. Toddy Mustang in Stabilo is fourth. Best lap is a 2:31.853. 0.242 off the fastest lap. Jason Short from New Zealand in Blanchimont is P2, 0.2 behind Wiremute. Toddy Mustang in Bus Stop Chicane is fourth, 0.4 behind the race dictator. Jason Short in La Source is P2, 0.6 behind Wiremute. Toddy Mustang in Eau Rouge is fourth, 0.6 behind the race dictator. Wiremute in Kemmel Straight is second, battling Jason Short. The race dictator in Malmedy is P3, 0.5 ahead of Toddy Mustang. Wiremute is P2, 0.2 ahead of the race dictator. The race dictator in Puhan is third, 0.2 behind Wiremute. Toddy Mustang in Fanya is P2, 0.1 ahead of the race dictator. The race dictator in Stabilo is P3, 0.5 behind Toddy Mustang. The leader has just finished the race. Jason Short finished P1. Toddy Mustang finished P2. The race dictator finished P3. Wiremute finished 4th. Greg Hurst finished P5. Broadcast bot is 7th.